being on the playground in grade 3 or 4. It was a competition between a fellow student of mine, and it was boys versus girls, and all the boys were rooting for him, and he drew the best tiger. And then it was my turn, and I don't remember what I drew, but I remember having this competition between artist versus artist.
From a very early age, I really wanted to be a painter. I had no idea what that meant. I think that I understood that it meant being the author of something or creating something.
Putting things together and making them work and balance and be right happened a lot when I was younger, for sure.
I would have work where I would just do a piece of art and then I would leave it on the street. And I would hope that somebody would, because I was making art quite a bit at that particular time, and after a while, you have so much of this stuff, and there's only so many pieces of art that your friends want, and family especially. And so I would just leave it on the street, and hopefully it would disappear, and I would hope it would have a home.
I had an art teacher that I wasn't the strongest in the class by any means, and she kind of pushed me to find my own way of drawing, and I started to believe that it was something I could do.
Excitement. I needed excitement. I needed to be around other artists, people that aspired to be artists, not people that were humming and hawing about what they were doing.
My biggest fear and motivator was that I did not want to be mediocre. I don't even know now what that word is or means, but at the time, for some reason, it seemed like this very kind of challenging thing.
I don't remember not having a studio. I have always had a place to make something, and always had a basement at home, or a bedroom at home where I could draw, or the kitchen table. And you kind of think everyone should have a studio.
My first studio, I shared a house with 3 other students. We were all students at the time. It was my last year of art school, and I kind of worked in the living room and the patio of this beautiful old craftsman house. And it was kind of a life-saving thing for me to have a space to work.
This studio provides almost everything I think I would want in a kind of in the perfect ideal studio. It has good light, really high ceilings, and big white walls. So I mean that's really all I need. Yeah. Studio.
Different, comfortable, at home. Studio for me is a important place to be. I'm even if I'm in here and I can't be engaged in being a maker and stuff, I don't have to be just physically always working in the studio.
I feel like my relationship to my studio is always quite contentious. It really depends on kind of how I'm working things out as I'm painting. I feel like as I paint, the goal is kind of to get into this quite meditative state where what I'm thinking and what I'm making are occurring almost simultaneously, and so that what I'm making is not just an illustration of what I'm thinking, and that kind of process of getting into that state, it's almost like a ritual in some ways, and it doesn't always happen right away, and if it never happens during a studio day, I can leave feeling quite aggravated. But then when you do arrive at that space, which might even only be for an hour, it's like magic.
Not all works, but a lot of the works are conditioned by the parameters of the studio, and I think of that as a really, it's kind of an intellectual thing in some ways, where it makes sense to start from somewhere instead of anywhere. And I'm not so naive to think that anything is possible as an artist. I think that sometimes people think that you can just sort of do whatever you want. I actually don't think that's true, but you could do a lot of things. There are many choices that could be made, almost what could seem infinite.
The good days are the days that there's continuity between one period of time to the next, where I'm not forced to transition out of the mental space of the studio, but can kind of continue to think about what I'm doing and kind of meditate on that. And then when I pick it up again, it's as if time hasn't really passed. I think those are the good days, because you never know when you're going to hit the thing. Like, you never know when that kind of miracle happens with paint, where there's kind of something transformative happens, and you can't force it. You just keep working and you keep laboring, and it'll come eventually. I mean, partly that's just the faith of the artist to believe that that will come eventually.
I'll wipe out the canvas sometimes 2-3 times in the studio. I'll work hours to create a piece or do a figure, and it just won't work sometimes. And it's just, sometimes I can't even explain what it is. It just doesn't feel right. And I'll usually give it that shot and put an extra time into it, but I usually know a few hours in that it's not going anywhere. So bad day is when it's just a wipeout time after time. And I'll have 3 underpaintings that just didn't work. On the other side, though, those are the best days, because I've explored 3 ideas that I know won't work, and so I guess it's not a waste that way, but it can be frustrating.
I don't think you'd even go home at the end of the day calling it, oh, I had a bad day. It would just be this sort of dawning feeling that nothing significant happened.
I don't have bad days. I really, really don't. I come to the studio and there's some days that are physically more taxing than others due to the work that we're executing. But I don't have a bad day. I mean, maybe I get a headache, but there's no headaches in art making. It's making art. There's no pressure. I mean, there's pressure for deadlines for exhibitions. It's serious and it's engaging, and but it's not bad. Sometimes frustrating, but it's not bad. It's all good.
Gosh, is painting satisfying at all? That is the better question. It can be, but it is sometimes torture, and it's kind of that, again, that just laboring through that torture and working and persevering in the hope that at some moment late in the day, the least unexpected time, it will kind of resolve itself, and that state of being that you've been searching for will manifest itself into an object that transcends your ability to comprehend it.
Things find their way into the studio too, even if you try to keep them out. You can't really turn off your memory, I don't think. In fact, I think a lot of artists would agree that art making, especially if you're involved in any kind of like repetitive, task-oriented art making, it can have this really sort of awful side effect where your mind is free to kind of wander and sort of plumb the depths of memory, which can bring up some really strange, like uncomfortable feelings, if we're talking about feelings. So that's why I say that, left to wander, like the mind you can think about just about anything and dwell on the most pleasurable and the most painful of things.
That's the easiest part, is actually to come up with the idea. I come up with ideas over and over again constantly. The hardest part is the execution. And even then, it's not really hard. I should say it's time consuming is the execution. The ideas is, and after that, it's just working and putting yourself through it, and execution. Everyone has ideas. Everyone has all kinds of ideas. I mean, I'm always getting, friends telling me, oh, you should be doing this, or here's something else to do. And I say, just go out and do it then. I mean, it's real simple to say, come up with an idea.
You've got to go and see art, and you have to take a chance on liking it, and then talking about liking it. and then trying to explain to yourself what it is about this thing. It doesn't have to be intellectual, it doesn't have to be smart, it just has to be honest with yourself, you know, and you don't have to know a lot, you don't have to be an insider, you just have to be willing to talk to people around you, artists, non-artists, about these things that you think are important, and then you change.
The beauty of the practice is that you can always come back the next day, especially when you wreck something. And so you it's kind of enjoyable to have that freedom now to be able to destroy something before you leave, and you know that you get to come back the next day. And even though it terrifies you and somewhat disgusts you, and you don't want to face it, but you get to face it. It's kind of like this wonderful privilege.
You're never done exploring, and you're never done learning, and you're never done. Every time you keep going with an idea, it leads to something else, and I think that the shows just continue to flow that way, and yeah, it's rewarding.
This big book out there, and on the front of it says art, and there's some people that are able to do a volume in that book. Or if I get one line in that art book that's new, that adds to the sum, I'll be very fortunate. That's what I'm looking to do. I'm looking to actually make a contribution in that book called Art, and the work to be relevant, not just today, but tomorrow and then. So that's sort of what I'm trying to do. Yeah.